Welcome in, everyone. It is a wild and wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is my buddy Calvin White. Coming to you from our respective homes for the next 2 hours here as we talk local, regional, and national sports topics. And we're glad to do it on what's turned into a beautiful Wednesday here in the mid-state. Calvin, how we doing?
I'm doing good. We got all our rain out of the way, hopefully, over the last couple of days. And like I told Wade yesterday, we've gotten into our postseason soccer and volleyball coverage. Obviously, weather doesn't affect volleyball, but for everybody's sake and for all the soccer folks' sake, I think we've had enough rain for a while.
I can agree with you there. And as you said, it has been a busy last week and a half. We've hit fall break here in Wilson County for my school, so no football on the docket this week except for one team. Mount Juliet Christian has a home game this Friday night against Glencliff. But other than that, we are full steam ahead. The last couple weeks, we've had private school volleyball district tournament start last week. They had their region tournament. It wraps up tomorrow afternoon down at Middle Tennessee Christian. We had our Division One schools, our public schools here in Wilson County, and obviously for you as well. District tournaments really getting going this week. Some wrapped up yesterday for us. We'll get into those scores in the rundown shortly. But I'm starting to get some weary legs now. I'm starting to get a little tired. Starting to sleep a little later. So we got to that point of the year where the body starts to shut down a little bit. It's not as bad as spring fling when we get in May and we have so many sports going on during the week of state championships, and it feels like we're running around like a chicken with our head cut off. But we got to that point of the fall at least, where three sports are in full swing, and so there's some weary and tired legs.
Yeah, they helped us
You got
out.
me?
Yeah, they helped us out a little bit with spring fling this year with breaking up, you know, all the sports not being in one central location anymore. So we get a little break from that. So we'll just have soccer and or boys soccer and baseball and softball and all those things to worry about at spring fling this year. But uh, the football regular seasons, you know, the end of that is quickly approaching. I told Wade yesterday, kind of depending on how deep some of our squads go in the playoffs, football could be over sooner than later for some of us.
Absolutely, that is very much true. Got a good show for you guys today. Excited on this Wednesday afternoon once again on this Wild and Wacky Wednesday presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Got a good show. In our second hour, Heather Williams, our friend from East Tennessee of WCYB Sports, will make her weekly pit stop as we continue to push through the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. We're down to the round of 8 after last week's cutoff race in the round of 12 at the Charlotte Roval. I'm excited to talk to her about SVG's dominant performance on the road course at Charlotte Motor Speedway. We'll also break down the upcoming round of 8 as races to go before the NASCAR Cup Series Championship in Phoenix. That is Las Vegas starting this weekend, and making the trip down to Talladega next week, and then followed by Martinsville before the Cup Series closes its season in the desert. Coming up here in the second hour, or in our segment, excuse me, Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian, kind enough to join us to talk a little basketball, a little NBA, as the Grizzlies have a preseason matchup tonight. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about their upcoming regular season. A lot of changes down there in Grind City this offseason. Desmond Bain gets traded away this offseason. They extend Jaron Jr. Got a new head coach who got his interim tag removed. That's Tuomas Isalo. That's the new man down in charge of the Grizzlies. Also, we'll talk about John Morant, who popped up on the injury report and is going to miss a couple weeks with an ankle injury. So all that and more coming from Drew here in our next segment. We'll also talk a little baseball here at the end of this first hour. MLB playoffs are in full swing. We have 4 potential series clinching games tonight or this afternoon, whatever time frame you want to put it. It'll start this afternoon up in Detroit, and it'll close tonight out in LA between the Phillies and the Dodgers. So we'll break down all 4 of those matchups and get into last night's results as well in the American League Division Series. I'm excited about it. I know Calvin's excited about it as well. And then we'll close the show with our Wild and Wacky segment and give you the wildest and wacky stories from across the globe. But Calvin, I think we need to start with yesterday's results and today's schedule on the rundown.
This is the Rundown.
Scores across the TWSLA. Most of these are district tournament action. In the District 12 3A semifinals, it was Green Hill picking up a 3-1 win over Beach. Columbia picks up a 3-0 sweep over Shelbyville. Culleoka 3-0 sweep as well over Fayetteville. Eagleville straight sets over Culleoka. Also straight sets over Santa Fe for Eagleville. Last night in the District 12 3A championship for the second time in 3 years, it's Green Hill walking away with the district title. They defeated Gallatin in 4 sets, 3-1. Gallatin advanced to that District 12 3A championship with a semifinal win over Sumner County rivals Station Camp 3-1. It was Lawrence County picking up a 3-0 sweep over Tullahoma. It was Lebanon in the 7 3A finals, or semifinals, picking up a 3-0 sweep over Warren County. It was Cookeville defeating Lebanon for the third consecutive year in the 7 3A finals last night at Campbell Brandon Gymnasium 3-1. It was Loretto 3-0 sweep over Lewis County. In the Division II Single A Middle Region semifinals. Let me get that correct. It was Middle Tennessee Christian picking up a 5-set win over Franklin Road Academy to advance to tomorrow night's Middle Region finals down at MTCS. It was Murfreesboro Central Magnet picking up a 3-1 win in 4 sets over Forest. In the other Division II Single A Middle Region final, it was BGA straight set win over Providence Christian Academy tomorrow afternoon. At 7 o'clock. Middle Tennessee Christian, BGA, in the Division II Single A Middle Regional Final. It was Cookeville, 3-0 sweep over Smyrna to advance to their final last night. It was Murfreesboro Central Magnet, 3-2 win over Spring Hill. Summertown defeated Loretto in straight sets, and they also defeated Collinwood in straight sets in district tournament action.
Moving over to girls soccer, Innsworth and Brentwood Academy tied at 1 apiece last night. Giles County won 2-1 over Coffee County. Henry County shut out West Creek 1-0. That game went to double overtime before Henry County won on penalty kicks. Liberty Creek shut out Cheatham County 9-0. Valor Collegiate wins 10-0 over Republic. Middle Tennessee Christian and Watertown draw at 0, and Gallatin beats White House 5-1. In MLB postseason action, the Seattle Mariners took Game 3 of the American League Division Series 8-4 over the Detroit Tigers. And the New York Yankees came back after losing the first 2 games and came back last night, got a big home run from Aaron Judge to take Game 3 of that ALDS 9-6 over the Toronto Blue Jays.
Tonight's action, just one game on the slate that we have posted right now in girls soccer in the TLSLA. That is a district match at 6 o'clock between East Hickman at Harpeth. Tonight in college football, down in the borough at MTSU, it's the 1-4 Blue Raiders taking on Missouri State on ESPN2. That is a 6:30 first kick at down there in Murfreesboro. Tonight in the WNBA, Game 3 WNBA Finals in Phoenix. It's Las Vegas Aces taking on the Mercury at 7 o'clock on ESPN. This afternoon in Major League Baseball, as I said, 4 potential series clinching games on the docket. The first game is underway up in Detroit. Seattle leads that series 2-1. It is Game 4 and is 0-0 in the top of the first. Coming up at 4:08 on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max, it's Milwaukee Brewers looking to bring out the brooms against their NL Central rival, Chicago Cubs, in Game 3 of their NLDS series. That is Quinn Priester taking on Jamison Tyon in that pitching matchup. Tonight at Yankee Stadium, the Yankees, as Calvin mentioned, staved off elimination last night with a rally against the Blue Jays. They will take on the Blue Jays in Game 4 of their ALDS series tonight in the Bronx. That is a 6:08 first pitch. You can find that one on FS1. And then tonight in the nightcap, 8:08 Central Time out in Los Angeles at Chavez Ravine. It's the Dodgers looking to bring the sweep over the Philadelphia Phillies. That is on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max. That is Aaron Nola versus Yoshitshibu Yamamoto in the nightcap tonight for Major League Baseball action. Ladies and gentlemen, those were your scores. That was your schedule tonight, and that concludes your rundown. Your top story brought to you by the good folks at Piggly Wiggly in Neely's Mill in Columbia. They offer daily lunch options from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. They also offer hand-cut meats, and everything is cost plus 10% at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill in Columbia. Presenting you our top story, and Calvin, I think we all can agree as sports fans in general, but specifically of college athletics. The transfer portal the last couple of years has been absolutely wild and wacky, to say, fitting the term of our show. And there was some much needed, legislation or some guidance or some parameters that needed to be set in order for when players enter the transfer portal. And we have approached that over the last couple of days. This is coming from CBS Sports. The NCAA Division One Administrative Committee approved on Tuesday 2 significant changes to the transfer portal, shrinking the amount of time granted to athletes to declare their intention to pursue a transfer. Finalizing the modification brought forth last night by the FBS Oversight Committee, the college football transfer portal will now just have one window to enter the portal moving forward, rather than one in the winter and an additional one in the spring. That window in 2026 will run for 2 weeks from January 2nd through January 16th. Because the 12-team college football playoff schedule extends deep into January, players participating in a postseason game on or after January 12th will have the opportunity to start the transfer process during a 5-day period that begins after their regular final postseason game. The second alteration pertains to the transfer exceptions granted to players after coaching changes. This current exception allows players to enter a 30-day window after their coach leaves or is fired. The committee's approved a new format, however, that has shortened that period to 15 days and begins 5 days after a new coach is hired or announced, seemingly in an effort to help crack down on midseason portal activity. So that's a lot of in right there for you, Calvin. But just hindsight, really quickly, once again, just one transfer portal window now in the spring, or I guess in the winter, since January is in the winter, from January 2nd through January 16th, and then shortening the days once a coach is fired from 30 days to 15 days, and 5 days after a new coach is allowed after a coaching change. Just really quickly, Calvin, give me your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, this is. I think everybody likes this. I think this is one of the best things the NCAA has done in a while. It seems like every decision they make, they somehow just end up getting sued in court and they lose. But this prevents people or players from transferring in the middle of the season, compared to when they had the December window. Um, and it doesn't really affect the top tier teams that are going to be playing deep into the postseason in the college football playoff, because you've got all those guys have an extra 5 days after their season ends to hit the portal in case they want to. And then they made it to where, like, you had the 30-day window to transfer if your coach got fired or resigned, but now you've got to wait 5 days to wait for your program to assign a new head coach in case those players want to play for that new head coach or something like that. We didn't see any of that a whole lot. Like, when coaches get fired, we didn't see just like a mass exodus at programs, but that's just kind of an extra precaution to making sure that doesn't happen. And maybe this will be a thing that prevents a billion players from going into the portal each year.
I think a big point for this, Calvin, is I remember back in the day when I was a kid, National Signing Day, there used to be just one signing day, and it was just like a holiday for college football athletics. I mean, I remember telling my parents back in the day when I was a child, and was really getting invested in Notre Dame recruiting and Vanderbilt recruiting. You wanted to stay home on National Signing Day and watch all the commits come in. You wanted to see the experts break it down, and with this past transfer portal window, granted all this was before that, you know coaches spent more time really recruiting the transfer portal and trying to keep players from their college roster than going out to sign players from the high school. And so just the world of the college athletics has changed, but I agree that this was much needed. This takes the pressure off coaches trying to, recruit their own roster. They can do actually high school recruiting after their season has come to a close in December. Get those guys in the fold, and then, have the opportunity to deal with and have those conversations with, your current roster players and make the decisions that's best for your group. It's the wild, wild west right now in the transfer portal. It's a lot of craziness and a lot of wackiness. I mean, we've seen players transfer to 2, 3, 4 different schools. I mean, Lord knows how many schools TJ Finley, who's at Georgia State right now, has been on. So it's just a lot of wildness and chaos. And I sound like an old man on get off my lawn, but I just miss the days where we didn't have that much chaos and confusion, where kids stuck it out and honored the kind of maybe the commitment that they made. And the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Just because you hop into the transfer portal doesn't mean that you're going to find a fit for you personally that you're looking for. Now, does it happen for those really good high profile players? Absolutely. But not for everybody. So this was some legislation and some, direction and guidance that was much needed for the transfer portal. So we will definitely see how it works out once it carries over into 2026. Coming up here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. It's time to talk to our friend Drew Hill down in Memphis as we get ready for some NBA basketball season that's rapidly approaching here at the end of October. We'll break down the upcoming Grizzlies season, talk a little Ja Morant. Heard he has an ankle injury. We'll get to Drew's opinion on that. And a lot of changes up down there in Grind City this offseason. Desmond Bain traded to Orlando. Jaren Jackson Jr. gets a big extension. We'll talk all that with Drew coming up here in our next segment. So stay with us here on Main Street Sports Today.
Closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Busy bee, yeah, busy bee. If you need...
Hold on, y'all, hold on. I need to make a call. Hey, this is Brianna with Busy Bee. I'm giving you a call to let you know your technician is on his way.
833.
Busy bee. Guys, not yet. Not yet.
Busy bee, oh,
Now
busy
ready,
bee.
guys.
Call 775-7833.
Custom Stone Handlers supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with Riverstone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe the measure of any person or company is how you treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStoneHandlers.com.
Welcome back into a Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. David Wilson, that is my good friend Calvin White. Joining us now down from Memphis on the southwest part of the state. Friend of the show, Drew Hill, kind enough to join us to talk a little Memphis Grizzlies basketball on this Wednesday afternoon. Drew, how we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well,
Good.
ready for another NBA season to approach us. Before we get into this version and this iteration of the Memphis Grizzlies, let's put a bow on last year. Obviously, 48-34 season for that group. Taylor Jenkins gets fired at the end of the season. Tuomas Isolo takes over. They, get, I guess, work their way through the play-in and get the luxury of facing the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. It was a 4-0 sweep for the Thunder, who went on their way to win the NBA championship. All that being said, though, Drew, how do you kind of summarize last year's season for a Memphis Grizzlies squad that obviously, missed Ja Morant for parts of its season, fired its coach at the end of the year, but still made the playoffs and had a winning record?
I think it was a mostly disappointing season just based off previous expectations for this team and this roster. Last year was a little bit of a mystery, a little bit more of a mystery than it had been in the past because you had the season before that was lost almost entirely due to injuries where Ja and Jaren both missed massive amounts of time. And so it had turned into a gap year. And in that gap year, it had felt like a lot of the teams in the West had passed the Grizzlies up. Memphis was determined to show they still belonged in that top class. It's not exactly what happened. So I think it mostly ended in disappointment last season, if we're being honest. And I think that there's now a new pathway forward. You mentioned a new coach, a new direction. I think they're really leaning into the strengths of Ja Morant now, which last year's team wasn't necessarily set up that way. So there's just been a lot of changes, and I think that there's reason, again, for optimism, but people don't view Memphis as maybe one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the West anymore, and that's probably a result of what happened last season.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously the new coach Tuomas Isolo, got the interim tag going into the playoffs last year against Oklahoma City. That got removed this offseason. Why do you feel like the organization felt like he was the right guy moving forward for this unit and this current core that's now being built?
Yeah, so if you know about Tomas's background, he came from Europe. He was a highly successful coach in Europe for a long time. It is not often that NBA teams go out and hire coaches directly from Europe. Usually they come over, serve as an assistant. The Grizzlies had made him a massive priority, and it was reported that they went to the lengths of paying a big buyout in order to get him out of his contract to come over here and coach in the States. So Memphis clearly thought very highly of him when they hired him as the lead assistant under Taylor Jenkins. But the system that was being run was more closely matched the ideas and basketball philosophy of their lead player development guy named Noah LaRoche. And I think at times that was very frustrating for Ja Morant, who was used to playing in a pick and roll. And instead, they're now using the system where they don't set any screens and they kind of do this wheel motion on offense that was very unconventional and non-traditional for the NBA. And so I think they went with Isolo because he had a basketball philosophy that was very direct. It was very no nonsense, and it was innovative in certain ways, but definitely closer to what traditional basketball and traditional NBA ideology sort of matches. And so I think that they think the combination of having someone that is so straightforward, so direct, and somebody that also, has an offense that the star players on the team are very excited to run is something that they viewed as a big positive. So they didn't even interview other candidates. They just went ahead and hired Tomas Isolo.
Drew, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey are both kind of nursing injuries right now, going to miss a little bit of time. Just what does front court depth look like for the Grizzlies? Obviously, with Jaren Jackson Jr., your star in that side of the court out, and obviously a guy that was one of the better rookies in the league last year in Zach Edey.
Yeah, the front court depth is very thin. In addition to Edey and Jaren, they're also going to be missing Brandon Clark for probably a significant amount of time. Jaren Jackson seems like is trending to be back, if not for the start of the regular season, very soon thereafter. So that's a very big positive for this team. Beyond that, beyond those 3 that we've mentioned, it is Jock Landale, who they brought in who played last season in Houston but didn't get a ton of opportunity. I think analytically and some of the advanced impact numbers, and we know that this front office really values some of the analytics. Jock Landale graded out pretty well as a big, so they're pretty confident in what he'll be able to do as a spot, sort of a spot guy that can fill minutes for some of those other players. And then they added PJ Hall on a two-way contract in addition to Omax Prosper. So it's going to be a lot of deep bench depth pieces trying to hold the fort down for about a month until that they can get the rest of their backcourt together. And in their first preseason game on Monday against Detroit, they already really struggled to keep the Pistons off the offensive glass. So that figures to be not only something that people have identified as, wait, maybe this will be a little bit of an issue, the rebounding. It's already proving to be an issue for the Memphis Grizzlies. So that's going to be something that they're going to have a lot of attention and focus on as the season gets started here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Drew, you kind of mentioned with Jaren Jackson Jr. Obviously, he's a big piece to this, organization. Signed a 5-year, $240 million extension this offseason. He's become really one of the best big men in the NBA. He's recorded over 1,500 points and 100 blocks last season. Averaged 22.2 points a game, 5.6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 blocks, 1.2 steals. I mean, he stuffs the stat sheet night after night. So he's a big piece of this core, obviously, with Ja Morant. So having him healthy on the court, it's going to be a big deal to obviously the Grizzlies and how far they can take this thing.
Yeah, Jaren last season, I don't think a lot of NBA fans realize this, but for, into the new year, he was in the top 5 in points per game per 36 minutes, or points per 36 minutes, in the entire NBA. So, and he has a repertoire and a shot diet that, when you look at it, may not exactly match the modern idea of what the game is sort of going to, more threes and layups. He takes a lot of floaters, a lot of unorthodox shots in the lane, but they're efficient shots when you make them, and he made a lot of them last year. He figures to be very important for this team, as we all know, because he is one of the 2 cornerstones here. But what will be most interesting about Jaren's season is that in the past, he's really become this very good player playing off the dribble, who can create offense for himself. I think the season that the Grizzlies lost Ja Morant almost for its entirety 2 years ago was really healthy for Jaren, because it taught him how to create for himself rather than rely on, the point guards to sort of do the work and find him a shot. And so, Jaren's really grown up that way. Now he's going to be setting a lot of screens. It's going to be a very heavy pick and roll offense. And he hasn't done a ton of that the last 2 seasons. So it'll be really interesting to see if Jaren can develop a 2-man game with Ja Morant, and that they can sort of play together in a screen and roll setting, because as good as both players are, and we know that they're both all-star level players, they haven't really played a ton together in that sort of manner. It's been a lot of my turn, your turn, versus the 2 of them sort of attacking offensively at the same time.
Drew, under Taylor Jenkins, defense was rarely the problem with the Grizzlies, but, the Grizzlies, kind of struggled on defense toward the end of last season. They traded for some guys, in the later part of the season, but just going into this year, obviously under a new head coach, what do you think that defense is going to look like this year?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of ball pressure. It's going to be extremely aggressive. And the reason being is that, Isolo is a big believer in pace. He wants to take more shots than the opponent, and he also wants to shoot a higher true shooting percentage, and that's basically the baseline of all of his basketball philosophy. It's the easiest way to score is when the defense isn't back there underneath the rim. So they're going to play a lot of ball pressure. They're going to be extremely aggressive defensively. I think you're going to see the steal numbers come up and that sort of thing, in part because of personnel and in part because of this new style, which is definitely going to be heavy on trying to force turnovers and get into transition, even if it means giving up some more shots. I think the goal is to get the game as fast as they possibly can get it. They were one of the fastest paced teams last year in the NBA. They want to be even faster this year. part of that is trying to get the opponent to shoot quickly too, not just shooting it, in under 7 seconds yourself. But they have better players to be better on defense this year. They traded away Desmond Bane. I figure we might get to that, but some of the players that they brought in, either as a result of that trade or the window of opportunity opened because Bane was gone. They're better defensive depth pieces than what Desmond Bane was. Now, I'm not saying they're better players than Desmond Bane, who's obviously really, really good, but they're more defensive-centric, on-ball perimeter guys versus somebody that can go get you 25 in the box score at the end of the night.
Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. And Drew, you mentioned Desmond Bane getting traded to Orlando this offseason. That was in June for Kentavious Caldwell Pope, Cole Anthony, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and 1 first-round pick swap. Obviously, Desmond Bane was a really high-level player for Memphis throughout his career, averaged 19.2 points a game and 6.1 rebounds and 5.3 assists in 69 games last year. It averaged over 17 points a game in his career while in Memphis. Kind of walk us through the philosophy on, I guess, the Memphis side of this trade, why it makes sense. Obviously, you can understand the Orlando perspective. They were a playoff team last year, what's now a wide-open Eastern Conference, and looking for some shooting. But from the Memphis perspective, why did this trade make sense?
This trade was a decision. Well, it really told you a few different things. The first is that Memphis didn't view itself as good enough to compete at a championship level with those 3 players, Ja, Jaren, and Desmond Bane, leading the way. And if you look at what the rest of the NBA has done, it's really been focused on making sure, look at Boston and Oklahoma City, for example. They have so many perimeter defenders and long wings with size and athleticism that helps them be elite defenses in the league. And Desmond Bane was a tremendous player, but that's not what he was. And so I think that this was a bet that out there is a higher end outcome than Desmond Bane. Whether that be 3, as a result of trading away Desmond Bane, you found 1 superstar in the draft, or you found 1 key rotation player in the draft, and you can replace the quantity of Desmond Bane, the quality of Desmond Bane, with the quantity of several other players that make up a better team overall. And so I think that was really what the Grizzlies have preached from the beginning since they decided to pull the trigger on this deal is, it's not just about 1 player on his way out. This is about finding a way that we can reach a higher ceiling than we had with Ja, Jaren, and Dez. And they felt like that they had basically seen how far that team would be capable of going. So they made the decision to retool and to restructure, and we'll see what happens. I mean, the thing that no one talks about, which is really surprising to me, guys, is that the prize possession from that trade, the Grizzlies don't have yet. It's not just about the picks. And yes, they used their own pick and Orlando's pick to trade up and take Cedric Coward this year. They have Phoenix's first-round pick unprotected this year as a result of this trade. Who knows how good or bad the Suns are going to be this year? I think a lot of people think that they'll be very bad. That seems like it's the true prize possession from this Bane trade. And so there will be a lot of people in Memphis cheering for the Grizzlies this year. There's also going to be a lot of people in Memphis cheering very hard against the Phoenix Suns this year, especially with what they say is a pretty loaded draft class at the top for this coming season.
Drew, especially with injuries right now, how much do guys like Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams and Jalen Wells and all those guys, how much do those guys have to step up, especially in this early part of the season?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, Vince Williams and Gigi, to see how much run they're going to get. I think that there's some sorting that the team's going to have to do out on the wing. I think if you were predicting a starting backcourt right now on opening night, you'd assume Ja will likely be back. It'll be Ja, Jalen Wells, and Kentavious Caldwell Pope. And then behind them, really, there's a big mix of players. There's Scottie Pippen Jr., there's Ty Jerome. Right there, you've already named 5 different players that can play in the backcourt. So I'm very fascinated to see what opportunity Gigi Jackson's going to get, what opportunity Vince Williams Jr. is going to get. But I think, we all know that, especially with Zach Edey out, it's like all those guards, it's going to be very critical and important that they step up and rebound. And you did mention Vince. Vince has been one of the best rebounding guards in the NBA over the course of his very young career still. So I would not be surprised at all if the Grizzlies find a way to sneak him a few minutes, just because somebody's going to have to get out there and grab some of these boards, because it's going to be difficult early on.
Through last weekend, John Morant popped up on the injury report with a sprained ankle. What are you hearing about his status here moving forward as we inch closer towards the regular season starting on October 22nd?
Yeah, I think everybody's tired of hearing the team spokesperson send text messages that so-and-so is injured, because we've already had several of those in the preseason. With Ja, it doesn't seem to be anything that's too serious. He was up moving around at the game on Monday night. He's not on crutches. He's not in a boot. He has a history of healing pretty fast from these things. So can we say for certain he'll be ready on opening night? No, we can't. But I think that if you watched him and sort of his demeanor and the way he moved around and all of that, and you're familiar with the history of Ja, it would be very unsurprising, if he is indeed out there on opening night when the Grizzlies get this thing started. So it doesn't seem to be anything that's overly serious. Obviously Ja is a sensitive topic because he's missed a lot of games for a number of different injuries over the last 3 seasons. So fans are a little stressed that, we already have Ja on the injury report, but this one doesn't seem to be anything that's overly alarming. So that's the good news.
True. When Zach Edey was at Purdue, and he was just dominating college basketball, won back-to-back National Player of the Year awards, there were a bunch of people saying that he's only good because he's tall and he'll never be a successful NBA player. Now, fast forward through his first NBA season, he made the All-Rookie team, averaged 9 points and 8 rebounds. Just how can Zach Edey? Obviously, he kind of proved himself that he could be a resourceful NBA player, but how do you think that he can kind of take that next step to kind of be that go-to big behind Jaren Jackson?
We actually talked about this when we were driving, me and my colleague Chris Harrington, as we were driving to Nashville last week for training camp. And you talk about all the rookies and young players on this Grizzlies roster, but also across the NBA, and you say, I wonder what they can become if they can do the X, Y, and Z. And you don't really have to do much of that for Zach Edey, because the physical tools are just so strong. He's so big, physical. He's such a good rebounder. Like, that stuff isn't going to go away. I mean, really the only question I think going into the season is the ankle, right? If he is physically, coming off of ankle surgery, if he's physically the same as he was a season ago, I have no question he's going to post better rebounding numbers than he did last season because of the system, right? Because last year he was being asked to stand on the perimeter. This year that's not going to be the case. So, what can he do to go to the next level? I'm not even sure, because I think the things that they're going to ask him to do is the stuff he already does well. I would be really surprised. Again, I think it all depends on the ankle. If he comes back and he's physically in a good spot, be really surprised if the numbers aren't significantly better for Zach Edey this season, just because I think his usage, his comfortability, all of it is ready for the next step. And so from a production standpoint in the box score, I expect that it's going to look better.
We're going to wrap you up right here and put you on the hot seat a little bit and let you dive into your crystal ball. When we're talking at the end of this upcoming season, rather, where do you see this Memphis team in the last couple of weeks of the regular season? Are they a team that's fighting to get in that postseason tournament, or do you kind of see themselves on the outside looking in?
I think Memphis is a playoff team. I think they're on the fringe of the playoff and the play-in. I think that they're going to be in the 6, 7, 8 range. The top of the West is just too strong. It's so good. We'll see what the Rockets end up being. I think they're they have a big need at point guard, and their backcourt depth isn't that great. So, maybe there's a couple teams that take a step back. But you'd expect, Denver's going to be in there. Minnesota's going to be in there. OKC is obviously the huge favorite. So I can't put Memphis quite into that tier, but I think they're in the tier right below. So I think at the end of the year, they're fighting to get into that 6th spot and avoid the play-in tournament. And that's sort of, a pretty realistic expectation for this team.
That's Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian. You can follow him on X at DrewHill_DM. Drew, we appreciate you taking some time on your Wednesday to join us. Look forward to catching up with you here in the next couple months.
Yep. Thanks, fellas. See ya.
All right. Coming up here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, it's time to dive into a little baseball as the MLB postseason has 4 potential series clinching games this afternoon. One of them is already underway. We'll dive into that score and the results from last night coming up next here on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us.
Columbia Power and Water Systems is dedicated to bringing our customers reliable, local service. Whether you're turning on a light switch, your faucet, or streaming on TV, our dedicated team members from here in Murray County work every day to keep you on. If you need us, call us 931-388-4833 or visit cpws.com. CPWS, local service, local support.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
This day in Braves history, October 8th, 2020. The Braves tossed their 4th shutout in 5 postseason games to sink the Marlins in the National League Division Series in Houston's Minute Maid Park. Atlanta defeated Miami 7-0, including a 3-game sweep behind Kyle Wright's 6 innings of work. Wright struck out 7 batters and passed the baton to A.J. Minter, Jacob Webb, and Shane Green to complete the fish fry. Atlanta scored 3 runs in the 4th, 1 in the 5th. 3 runs in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, and 2 more in the 5th to advance to the National League Championship Series, where they would go on to face the Los Angeles Dodgers. That was this day in Braves history. October 8th, 2020. Calvin, I remember this day vividly. I was sitting on my couch in college watching the Braves win that game on Fox Sports 1 at the time. And, that was really kind of the first instance where Kyle Wright, the former first-round pick out of Vanley, you could see it click for him, and he would go on the next season, I believe, to win 21 games and be a really big part of the Braves rotation. Obviously, now he has departed, but I think that was really one of the moments where it clicked. And, for us young Braves fans, I'm going to put you in that category as well as me, we had not seen the Braves had a lot of postseason success since the late 90s and maybe the early 2000s where they, won a couple series. It was very bleak postseason, and there was a lot of quick exits in the postseason for the Braves. We saw it. They first kind of started making the run. They ran up against the Dodgers with those baby Braves with Brian Snicker. They fell in the 2019 NLDS to the Cardinals, where you felt like they were the better team. I mean, heck, the Braves, they led the series 2-1. They had Josh Donaldson, Dallas Keuchel, a young Ozzy Albies. Mike Soroka was pitching really well. You had Mike Foltynewicz. You thought that those Braves teams could, break through and make a run to the National League Championship Series or even the World Series. It was this Braves team in 2020. Obviously, a COVID shortened season, no fans in the stands for the wild card series against Cincinnati. No fans in the stands for the NLDS in Houston. Now, there were fans in the stands, just a few, for the championship series in the National League in Arlington. We want to talk about that end result where the Braves were up 3-1. And let the Dodgers come back. But, this was kind of the turn where you could see that the Braves, maybe those postseason demons were behind them.
Yeah, Wade and I talked about this yesterday. This day in Braves history yesterday was 2 years prior when Ronald Acuna Jr. hit the grand slam off Walker Buehler in the 2018 divisional round. And, they ended up losing that series to the Dodgers. That was, just the first of many postseason heartbreaks over these last couple of years that the Dodgers handed the Braves. And then that next year, like you mentioned, against the Cardinals, that was, when the Cardinals put, I think, 11 or 12 runs on the Braves in the first inning of, in the first inning of what, if I remember correctly, ended up being the game that eliminated the Braves.
It was decisive game 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's also what I told Wade yesterday was it's hard to believe that Marcell Ozuna's been a Brave for 5 years already after he just tormented the Braves in that series in 2019 for the Cardinals. But what's ironic about it is the one time the Braves actually broke through in 2021, they weren't even that great of a regular season team. They just got hot at the right time and just kind of mowed everybody down on their way to the World Series where they beat the Astros, who had just done their fair share of mowing through people in baseball over the last couple of years. But, we've talked about it over the last couple of weeks. Braves are going into next year with a new manager, whoever that may be. Hopefully everybody's healthy by the time the season starts. And, it just kind of felt like the players that were healthy this past year just had season-long slumps. Like Ozzy Albies never really got it going for a significant amount of time. Austin Riley never really got it going. Didn't get much production at all out of the shortstop spot all year. So hopefully the Braves can, rebound, get healthy, and put up a good season next year under a new manager.
Yeah, you made a really interesting point. The 2021 team won 88 games in the regular season. And they go on to win the World Series. You think about the teams that they've had just recently over the last couple of years. I mean, 2 years ago, they went over 100 games. They bow out in the NLDS. I mean, you thought that roster could easily go on and win the World Series. Seems like the Phillies have been their kryptonite now. It used to be the Dodgers. Now it's the Phillies. And it seems like the Phillies, the only team they can beat in the playoffs, we'll talk about them here shortly, is the Braves. As they face elimination tonight. But the Braves have had, we've been blessed. It's sad and makes my heart break that they're not in this, run and in the postseason right now. But we also have had a really good run over the last couple of years. So hopefully we will start a new one next year. A team that's making a run, they won their first division title this year since before Calvin was born back in 2001. That's the Seattle Mariners, and they took a 2-1 lead over the Detroit Tigers last night up in Comerica Park after a rain delay extended what was supposed to be an early first pitch to the hours of the evening. It was Cal Raleigh, Eugenio Suarez, and J.P. Crawford each homering in that matchup. Seattle won Game 3, 8-4. Logan Gilbert was absolutely phenomenal for the Mariners last night on the mound. He had 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, and 7 Ks as they pushed Detroit to the brink of elimination. Calvin, did you by chance see any of that matchup? That was the Mariners getting to Jack Flaherty early and working their way into the Detroit bullpen.
I didn't get to watch much of this one. I only got to watch the tail end of the Yankees game, which we'll get into in a minute. But, obviously it was really big for, the Mariners to take this game. And, we talked about it with Wade yesterday. When the Mariners took Game 2, they beat Tarek Skubal. So I told Wade I would be interested to kind of see how the Tigers responded without their ace for potentially the rest of this series. And we talked about it when the Tigers ended up handling the Guardians in the wild card round, how Detroit's bullpen would perform, when guys like Tarek Skubal get knocked out of the game, if they get knocked out of the game. And so, I mean, Seattle was one of the best teams in baseball all season long. Cal Raleigh is in the MVP conversation, more than likely, I think, going to win it at this point. But Seattle's up 2-1 now, and Detroit's got to find a way to, limit the runs without Tarek Skubal.
Right, absolutely, and obviously it's a duh statement, I'll say, but like it's a big game for Detroit right now. Not only is your season on the line, but that in Game 5, Tarek Skubal is lurking for a potential, winner take all in Seattle. In your mind, you still feel really good, even though it's a Game 5 on the road with your ace on the mound, thinking that Seattle cannot beat him twice, and then vice versa. The sense of urgency right now for Seattle as they are leading 1-0 in the top of the third against Casey Mize with Bryce Miller on the hill for the Mariners. The sense of urgency to get this done today in Detroit and not have to go home and face Tarek Skubal, that's a big deal. You also rest your pitching for the potential American League Championship Series. We'll get into the series on the other side between Toronto and New York here in just a moment. But it's a big deal for both teams. Seattle, you want to get it done today. Yes, you would have Game 5 up in the Pacific Northwest, but you would have to face Tarek Skubal, who is arguably, with Garrett Crochet, one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball. So it's a sense of urgency on both sides. There's no sleeping right now for Seattle, even though you do have a lead and you have the potential to go home. You want to put that nail in that coffin tonight. A team that didn't put the nail in the coffin, and they were close last night, was the Toronto Blue Jays. They were up 2-0 going into the Bronx last night and built an early lead, a 5-run lead in their matchup in Game 3 against the Yankees. But it was the Yankees coming back to defeat the Blue Jays 9-6 to extend that series to a Game 4 tonight in New York. Aaron Judge, who's also in that MVP conversation with Kyle Raleigh, hit a game-tying 3-run home run in the fourth. Jazz Chisholm hit the go-ahead shot in the fifth. And the Yankees were able to deploy their bullpen as Aaron Boone needed down the stretch to defeat the Blue Jays in Game 3. Toronto was 39-0 in games they led by more than 5 runs in this season. They got their first loss in that case last night. So obviously a big win for the Yankees, Calvin. Their backs were firmly against the wall. Aaron Boone has probably heard the chatter about his job security so much over the last couple weeks. And so the Yankees, gutted it out per se. And extended their season another day.
Yeah, and Toronto scored 29 runs in the first 3 games of the series. Just put an absolute beating on the Yankees in the first 2 games, and Aaron Judge kind of put a little. He kind of quieted the non-clutch rumors last night. With the big home run in the fourth, that just barely nicked the foul pole to knock the game up, and after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit the monster grand slam in the second game, the Yankees found a way to at least stave off elimination for another game. Obviously, every game is must win at this point, but Seattle looks hot right now, especially on offense.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, 4 potential series clinching games this afternoon and tonight in Major League Baseball. We mentioned the current game underway on Fox Sports 1. That is where you can find it. Seattle Mariners leading the Detroit Tigers right now, heading into the bottom of the third. It's Seattle 1-0. Bryce Miller on the mound for the Mariners. He's tossed 2 innings so far with 1 hit and 1 strikeout. Casey Mize has the ball for Detroit. He struck out 6 through the first 3 frames, but surrendered a single to Dominic Canzone, who scored Josh Naylor in that matchup to give the Mariners a 1-0 lead. Coming up here shortly, we'll dive into the National League Series now. It's the Brewers looking to complete the sweep over their NL Central rival Chicago Cubs up on the north side of Chicago at Wrigley Field. That is Quinn Priester taking the ball, former Nashville Sound, taking on Jamison Tyone tonight. And, the Brew Crew, Calvin, they won 97 games in the regular season. They were just consistently one of the best teams in baseball. Not a lot of big names on that team. Jackson Churio is going to be a budding superstar. Andrew Vaughn has came out of nowhere, former Nashville Sound once again, been phenomenal. Bryce Terang, Sal Frelick, William Contreras was an all-star. They don't have a bunch of huge names nationally, but Pat Murphy's group just continues to get it done.
Yeah, and they score a lot of runs, but they don't do it with a lot of home runs. They dink and dunk you everywhere. It feels like it always feels like whenever they need a big hit, somebody's always willing to just bloop one in there and score some runs. And their pitching's been really good all year. I believe they had a couple bullpen arms hurt toward the end of the regular season, but like you said, they for the last month or two of the regular season, they were pretty easily the best team in baseball. And right now they're playing like it against another team that really dominated throughout the year in the Cubs.
Yeah, I mean the Cubs have had a great year. It's just that dynamic is so interesting. Obviously, Craig Counsell, their manager, former Milwaukee manager, they absolutely despise him. The Cubs have a really good team. Obviously, Pete Crow Armstrong was an All Star. I mean, obviously they have Dansby Swanson, former World Series champion with the Braves, former NCAA champion here at Vanderbilt locally. They have a lot of really good players. So the Cubs are definitely not going to go down without a fight. Their starting pitching has really let them down. Obviously, Matthew Boyd couldn't make it out of the first inning the other day up in in Milwaukee. So we will see how the friendly confines of Wrigley Field treat the Cubs, who are definitely going to have their backing of their home crowd. We mentioned up in New York, Game 4 tonight in that American League Division Series between the Blue Jays and the Yankees. Really quickly, that is Lewis Farland taking the hill for the Blue Jays, who are looking to work their way back, to the American League Championship Series, and it's Cam Schittler for the Yankees on the bump, who are looking to extend this series back to north of the border and go to Toronto for a decisive Game 5, where I would assume they would have Max Fried in line, ready to go and waiting. And in the nightcap tonight, last but not least, a very much anticipated series. This was something that I was eyeing when the postseason scenarios came out several weeks ago, and we started playing the matchups. I think there was no doubt that the most interesting and entertaining division series was going to be the possibility of the Phillies and the Dodgers, and we got it. It was the Dodgers coming back in Game 1 and steal it up at Citizens Bank Park. They held off the Phillies in Game 2. So the defending World Series champions take a 2-0 series lead back to Chavez Ravine in the City of Angels tonight. It's the Phillies giving it to Aaron Nola with their season on the line, and the Dodgers handed it to Yoshitshibu Yamamoto, who is a nice person definitely to hand it off to in a potential game series or a series clinching win. Obviously, the Dodgers have flexed their muscle here, Calvin, in the series. It's been everybody really. Freddie Freeman's got it done. Teoscar Hernandez with a big 3-run home run in Game 1. Mookie Betts has really kind of started to swing it. They've had timely defense. They've deployed Hiroki Sasaki out of the bullpen, the rookie who's missed a lot of time. So it seems like the Dodgers, they were your NL West champion, but they only had the third best record in the National League behind the Brewers and behind the Phillies. But they are a juggernaut when they get things going and everybody's healthy.
Yeah, I think that they were still a lot of people's pick to win the World Series this year just because of experience. And they had a lot of pitching hurt during the regular season. And I feel like it was always just a matter of when they got that pitching back healthy, when they would return to true form. I mean, it's Game 3 of the division series, and they're handing the ball off to a guy that would be an ace on most of the teams in baseball. They've already gone through Shohei Ohtani and Blake Snell. And I told Wade yesterday that me, you, and Wade and Mo could go out there and be the starting rotation for the Dodgers, and they would probably still score some runs and win some games. And right now they look like it. And the Phillies are kind of getting a little bit of the treatment they've given the Braves over the last couple of years, where the Braves just dominated the regular season. The Phillies were able to kind of hand it to them in the playoffs. And right now the Phillies are kind of getting smacked around by the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's important to note, at least from a Philadelphia standpoint, no Zach Wheeler. I mean, he is their ace. He's absolutely a gamer, and he's phenomenal. He's out for the rest of the season. Eric Nola has not been the Aaron Nola of old this year. Obviously, the Phillies are hoping that he returns to form tonight. He had been battling some injuries, and the starting pitching has not been Philadelphia's problem in the first two games. Christopher Sanchez was absolutely phenomenal in game one. Jesus Luzardo did everything you asked from him in game two. Their bullpen has kind of let them down in stretches. And at least in game two, their offense just didn't do enough with the opportunities that it presented itself. So that'll be definitely a game that I'll be keeping my eye on tonight. The Phillies, this feels consequential for them. This core group that they've had has been to the playoffs, kind of like the Braves, year after year, and they have not walked away with the World Series. They have some potential free agents this offseason that could walk away. So, Philadelphia kind of going to have to look itself in the mirror if they can't get it done versus the Dodgers here tonight or in this series in general. Really quickly for you, fans of expansion baseball and the hope that a professional team could one day come to Nashville. I think we all have our fingers crossed on that. Yesterday, the new owners of the Tampa Bay Rays met with the media, and they are promising to rebuild repair hurricane-damaged Tropicana Field down there in time for next season. And they're also beginning a search for a new ballpark in the region beginning in 2029. That group is led by a real estate developer based in Florida, Patrick Zalewski, who finalized a $1.7 billion purchase last week from Stu Sternberg, who owned the Rays for 18 years and had sought to find the team a new stadium. Obviously, there's been some back and forth with this. Under their current lease with the city of St. Petersburg, the Rays are obligated to place at least at the Trop for 3 more seasons. The mayors of both Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg attended the news conference yesterday. The Rays in March withdrew from a $1.3 billion project to construct a new ballpark stadium adjacent to Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, citing the hurricane and delays that likely drove up the proposal's cost. This past season, they played in the New York Yankees spring training facility, George Steinbrenner Field. So that's some news there. Obviously, we're hoping that we can get an expansion team here in Nashville in the foreseeable future. That is definitely something I would assume that is on Rod Manfred's list, at least have 2 expansion teams moving forward. Coming up here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, as we close our first hour and have entered our second, we'll dive into the latest edition of the Grab Bag as we have some news and notes across the world of the NFL and some college football. So stay with us as we enter our second hour.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy at zioneagles.org or 931-388-7531. You can schedule your appointment to visit their beautiful campus. Again, zioneagles.org or 931-7531 to schedule your visit today.
Is your internet slowing you down? It's time for an upgrade. Whether you're at home, working from your home office, or at your business, it's time to unleash the speed you need with speeds up to 1 gig at CPWS for as low as $70 a month. Give us a call, 931-375-7777. Local service, local support, CPWS.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back in. It's Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Day, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. David Wilson. That is Calvin White. It's time to dive into the latest edition of the Grab Bag as we talk some news and notes across the world of the National Football League and the NCAA. We'll start in the NFL, where former world champion wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. is in the news. It became reported from ESPN yesterday afternoon that the former All-Pro star has accepted a 6-game suspension for violating the NFL's policy on performance-enhancing drugs, delaying the star receiver's comeback attempt into the NFL. Beckham announced his pending suspension during an appearance on the Pivot podcast, which published with the interview on Tuesday. He is a free agent, and he cited that he failed a PED test last season while he was a member of the Miami Dolphins. He's 33 years old. He will be by the time the suspension ends, but he has reiterated that he wants to return to the NFL this season. He identified during his appearance on the podcast there are 4 teams that he would be interested in joining. Those would be the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Kansas City Chiefs, and 2 former franchises that he's played with. That would be the Los Angeles Rams and the New York Giants. Beckham will not be eligible to play until week 12. Really struggled to make an impact last year as well with the Dolphins. Just had 9 catches for 55 yards in an offense with Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Waddle, and obviously Tyreek Hill. So Calvin, obviously OBJ not on a roster right now, but obviously looking to make a return. He'll have to wait at least a couple more weeks to do that with this news of the suspension.
Yeah, after he spent those couple years in Cleveland, after he left the Giants, he kind of, bounced around playing for Miami and Baltimore and the Rams, and just really hasn't been able to make an impact for anybody he's played for, it feels like, ever since he left Cleveland. And, obviously, I'm sure somebody will try to pick him up, maybe like a team that's trying to make, a run in the playoffs. Obviously, a couple of those teams he listed are probably going to, at least have a shot at the playoffs, like the Rams, Steelers, maybe. I don't think a lot of people would put the Giants in the playoff picture right now, but I guess I kind of understand that. That's where he started his career. He was a 3-time All-Pro in New York. So
there's worse places to be than New York.
There are. And, he's not playing for free. He's going to get paid wherever he goes. So wherever he wants to go, and if somebody wants to pick him up, we'll see if he can produce.
Yeah, I mean, when the Rams made the Super Bowl and they won it a couple of years ago against the Bengals, obviously OBJ was a part of that team. He had a phenomenal first half, had a nice touchdown catch towards ACL in that game. And you could honestly make the case that he was a contender for Super Bowl MVP prior to that injury. And ever since that, obviously, he has not been the same player. But, in his prime, OBJ with Eli Manning up in New York, even, when he made his trip over to the Browns, he was one of the best wide receivers in the game. I mean, the talent just oozed. I mean, that one-handed catch that he made on Sunday Night Football when he was with the Giants against the Cowboys will forever live or one of the best catches and one of the best plays in NFL history. So OBJ looking to make a return to the sidelines and onto the field for a contender here as we approach the end of the year. Transitioning to the world of college football, obviously there has been a lot of news, and most of it not good. What's going on over there in Chapel Hill, or as they say, Chapel Bill, with former Patriots head coach Bill Belichick? They've been in the news so much, and they are back in the news once again. This is coming from CBS Sports, where North Carolina assistant coach Armand Hawkins has been suspended. He's their cornerbacks coach amidst allegations that the program awarded impermissible benefits to players. This is coming also from the Athletics' Bruce Feldman. Among the alleged extra benefits were sideline passes given to player's family members, which is in violation of NCAA rules. Hawkins' suspension is the latest bit of turmoil inside the UNC program, which has been much maligned with a 2-3 start to the Bill Belichick era. We can't forget that beatdown they took in the first game against TCU on ESPN with, I guess, College Game Day, and specifically there. Hawkins joined the Tar Heel staff ahead of the season, coming by way of Washington, where he was a defensive analyst under UNC defensive coordinator Steve Belichick. That's Bill's son, excuse me. He's in the first season as a position coach after holding recruiting positions and analyst roles at Washington, Arizona, Colorado, and USC. So UNC, Calvin, once again back in the news, not for the right reasons.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like a big deal, but also kind of on the flip side of that, I can't think of any reason why a player's family needs to be on the sideline. Um, we see that at high school games we cover sometimes. Schools let everybody that's ever suited up for the program go stand on the sideline and watch the game on Friday while we're trying to, walk around and do what we need to do. But, obviously that's a little bit different. But, I just can't think of a reason that a player's family would need to be on the sideline. And obviously that's against the NCAA rules. But, like you said, that's just kind of another little note in a really bad season for North Carolina that's getting publicity for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. That North Carolina defense not off to a good start. Coming from this article, they're allowing 246.2 passing yards per game, which gives UNC the 102 pass defense in the country. Against power conference opponents from power conferences, excuse me, they have been outscored 120 to 33. They also, took a beat down to Clemson this past weekend, who has issues of their own, to say the least. Moving back to the world in the NFL, to America's team and America's, I guess, favorite owner, that would be Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys. If you guys have not seen his documentary on Netflix, it is definitely worth a watch, to say the least. You will get to know even more about Jerry and his, run the America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if anybody watched their victory, their 37-22 win over the New York Jets. That was on Fox here locally, which improved the Cowboys to 2-1 on the season. Well, Jerry was caught on video giving fans the middle finger, Calvin. He stuck it out and made an obscene gesture to some fans, which would cost him $250,000 fine, according to CBS Sports Insider Jonathan Jones, who said Jerry will appeal the fine. He gave the fans the middle finger from his luxury box at MetLife Stadium. Jones received questions Tuesday about the incident during his weekly radio appearance on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. He insisted that this was simply a mishap on his part, where he's trying to give Cowboys fans in front of him a thumbs up and point after a late touchdown, and simply raised the wrong finger. Jones said that was unfortunate. That was an exchange with our fans out in front of us. There was a swarm of Cowboy fans out in front, not Jets fans, Cowboys fans. And the entire stadium was brimming with enthusiasm of Cowboys, and certainly late in the game. And that was inadvertent on my part. That was right after we made our last touchdown, and we were all excited about it. There wasn't any antagonistic issue or anything like that. I just put up the wrong show on the hand, but that was inadvertently done. And if I'm not kidding, if you want to call it accidental, you can call it accidental. Accidentally flipping the bird.
Yeah, no one gives the middle finger by accident, especially when you're trying to, give a thumbs up. It's a lot easier to give a thumbs up, I feel like, than, going through all the effort to flip somebody the bird. But, $250,000 is, pocket change for Jerry Jones. And, if anything, this makes the news and we can have a laugh at it like we are right now.
I mean, if he wants to donate $250,000 to me, I would appreciate it. I mean, I would gladly take all the fines that they hand out in the National Football League. I really do wonder where it goes to. Hopefully, it goes to a good cause, maybe a charity or something. I would have to do some research on that where all those fines go. But if that's not the case, I mean, they can gladly donate it to the show. We would definitely appreciate it, and put the money towards good means. Staying in the NFL, this was a game that I visibly watched on Sunday from a friend's couch, and I watched this play, and particularly it was the Tennessee Titans. I know you all saw it, who were trailing against the Arizona Cardinals, where Cardinals running back Amari DeMercado ripped off a long run, which is going to be perceivably a touchdown and a backbreaker against the Titans and send them on a continued losing streak until he dropped the ball, I guess mistakenly. It has to be a mistake. Just inches short of the goal line where it goes through the back of the end zone. And it's a touchback. Well, head coach Jonathan Gannon, who's in his second season up in Arizona, had some words in an exchange with DeMercado on the sidelines on Sunday. Kind of bumped into him, made some contact with him. I don't know if a bump is the right word. Made contact with DeMercado on the sidelines. Clearly out of frustration for what had happened. And that head coach, Jonathan Gannon, has now been fined $100,000 for his altercation on the sidelines. Gannon will not face further discipline from the league. This is coming from the NFL in a statement on Tuesday. We have been in contact with the NFLPA and the club, which have addressed the matter. There is no further action needed. As I mentioned, this was a 72-yard touchdown run that would have put the Cardinals up 28-6 in the fourth quarter. Instead, it was a fumble turned into a touchback in the end zone to help the Titans pick up their first win and snap a 10-game losing streak with a wild 22-21 win in Arizona. Calvin, did you see this play? And give me your thoughts. I mean, obviously, I would be pissed. Any head coach, any coach, position coach, players are pissed. I mean, how many times have we seen this play out? Whether it's in high school, college, or pro, just take the ball across the goal line and hand it to the official.
Yeah, and Wade and I talked about this yesterday with Steve Lehman. Amari DeMercado got a chance to play because the two running backs in front of him were hurt. This would have been, I think, his fourth career touchdown if he was able to hold on to it. And Wade made the point yesterday that if I was a guy that never played and hardly ever got a chance to score, you would have to pry that ball away from me. I would run it through the end zone and take it back to the sideline with me, and the equipment guy would have to, pry it from my hands. But at the same time, this was a play that kind of helped jumpstart the Titans' comeback. And what's Jonathan Gannon supposed to do? Is he just supposed to, let it slide and tell this guy that it's all going to be okay? Wins are hard to come by in the NFL, and the margin for error between winning and losing is pretty small a lot of times. And anytime you have a chance to build the lead, I would you want to take it. And this was a play that directly impacted the game and helped the Titans jumpstart their comeback. And now Arizona's, they lost to one of the worst teams in football this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, can you really bench the guy now? I mean, obviously they have lost James Conner for the season. They have lost Trey Benson as well, who will be out at least, I believe, 4 to 6 weeks from a report that I read. So they're on their third string running back. So in this situation, this is James Conner or Trey Benson making this carry and making this run. I mean, you're really diving into your depth per se. I mean, Arizona, this was a game that they absolutely needed. They started their season 2-0. They lost in San Francisco on a walk-off field goal. They lost to Seattle on a walk-off field goal as well. So they were 2-2 coming into this home matchup against the Titans this past weekend in the desert. This is a game they needed, and they frankly should have won. They were up 21-6 late in the fourth quarter. This would have made it 28-6. That would have been game, set, match. The Titans would have once be again having conversation this week about Brian Callahan and his job security and his future. And now it completely turns. The Titans pick up their first one of the season, and they seemingly have some momentum headed now to Las Vegas against another team that struggled this past weekend up in Indianapolis. So just a complete 180 in how an inch, a yard, makes the difference between a win and a loss. And I was at a buddy's house watching this game, Calvin, as I told you. I knew after this moment, I told him, I said, the Titans are going to win this game. You could just feel it oozing through the TV screen. So that is what happened out there in Arizona this past weekend. Coming up here on Main Street Sports Today, as we continue our Wild and Wacky Wednesday, it's time for our weekly pit stop with friend of the show, Heather Williams, as she dives in and discusses this past weekend's round of 12 finale at the Charlotte Roval, whereas SVG spoiling the playoff party once again, picking up his 5th road course win of the season. We'll also talk to Heather about the upcoming round of 8, which features races on 3 completely different tracks. That is Las Vegas, Talladega, and Martinsville, as we are 3 races away from heading to Phoenix, where we were crowned a NASCAR Cup Series champion here in 2025. Friend of the show, Heather Williams, coming up next here on Main Street Sports Today, so stick with us.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily, as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Welcome back into Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. Joining us now for her weekly visit here on Main Street Sports Today, it's Heather Williams of WCYB Sports out in East Tennessee, joining us via audio and on the phone. Heather, how are you doing? Heather, you got us?
Yeah, doing well, guys. How you doing?
There you go.
Good.
We're doing well. It's a beautiful day here in the mid-state. Heather, let us dive right into it. This past weekend at the Charlotte Roval, I guess it's no surprise to say we'll start here. No surprise that SVG puts on another absolutely dominant road course performance, picks up his 5th win of the season with a winning margin, as I'm looking at it right now, of 15 seconds over second place Kyle Larson. Heather, the guy's just absolutely phenomenal. He seems to have a mastery not only over road courses, but this next gen car on road courses. Absolutely phenomenal. Tied Jeff Gordon, I believe, for most wins on a road course in a season, if I've looked at that correctly. Just kind of put a bow on just another dominant performance by SVG on a road course.
Yeah, I think it's most consecutive wins in the road course. He ties Jeff Gordon with 5.
Yes.
Because they used to only run a couple times a year when Jeff was running most of the time on road courses. Definitely the best road course racer in the garage area right now, though I do believe at a place like the Roval that folks are catching him. I had the chance earlier this week to talk to Christopher Bell, who was up there racing for quite some time with SVG. And I asked him that, and he said, well, there's a lot that goes into it. the Roval is half an oval. But he also intimated that the 14-second victory margin is a little bit artificial because once SVG got out front on older tires, everybody else pitted. And everybody else pitted so that if they had a restart, they would have fresher tires because on the short runs, particularly Larson and Bell were every bit as good as SVG. It was on those long runs that nobody could catch him. So they knew they were going to catch him if it stayed green. So they all pitted to get tires in case it didn't stay green. They might have a chance to overtake him with the fresher set of Goodyear. So, yes, he's the man. I'm not taking anything from him for sure. But I think, I had a feeling going into the day that a playoff driver might be able to get him on the Roval. And I think if there is any place that someone does catch him, it will be at the Roval because of the unique situation. It's not quite as technical as some of the other road courses or parts of the infield that are technical, but it's not quite as technical because it has 2 times where they go out on the big track and you're wide open and it's an oval. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think that the next time we go to the Roval, SVG may not win, but then again, he probably will win on an oval sooner rather than later. So that still makes him dangerous.
Absolutely. And, he absolutely dominated this past weekend. And, there was a race within the race. Obviously, there's a race to win the race, per se, and capture the checker flag. There's also the race for the last playoff spot to advance to the round of 8. Joey Logano snatches that in the last closing laps over Ross Chastain, who did like another one of those Hail Mary moves into the final turn, takes out Denny Hamlin and, takes it backwards across the start-finish line. But I want to, ask you about Ross first, Heather, but then secondly, to ask you about Joey. It just seems like, he always finds a way in these moments to advance and just, continue his momentum and, creep, I guess, closer towards that championship race, which we all have kind of admitted that, Phoenix suits Penske and Ford. And it seems like Joey Logano, he's a multi-time champion for a reason. He finds a way in these moments to advance to the next round.
Yeah, as far as Ross goes, he was the first one to admit, as did Bubba and Tyler Reddick, really, that they just weren't good enough in the previous 2 races to advance. It wasn't just about that last lap desperation move. Ross did some things during the race. His team did some things during the race that put him in a bad position to begin with, or he's not trying to have to make that move because he had worked his way ahead of Joey in the standings in the middle of the race, and then made some mistakes and dropped back. A pit road penalty particularly was hurt him a lot. So, it's Ross, right? He's always going to be entertaining. He's always going to do something crazy. He has a video game move that is now outlawed in NASCAR because he did the Hail Melon at Martinsville a few years ago. So you knew that he was probably going to do something crazy like that. As far as Joey goes, the field has they screwed up. They let him in. A year ago he was eliminated at the Roval and got in because Alex Bowman was disqualified. And here we are again. He should have been eliminated at the Roval, but Ross Chastain makes a mistake. A couple of people let Ross or passed Ross in the closing laps when, if they known what was going on, maybe they don't. But the field made a mistake, and here's Joey. And now these next set of tracks are made for Penske and Joey. Martinsville, Joey and Ryan both have been extraordinarily successful at Martinsville, particularly in the fall when they've needed to advance. And you talked about Phoenix and their success there. So, yeah, I think that the field would have had a better chance had they not let Joey in. But now they have let Joey in. You can't let him jump from last place and get into the championship 4. Like, you can't do what they did last year after this. And last year they went to Homestead. This year we're going to Phoenix, but you can't let him go out this weekend and win and punch his ticket to the championship, because really he's going to have to win or have 3 extraordinary races to get to the championship. You just can't let that happen. If you're the rest of the field.
Absolutely.
Joey, you absolutely want that to happen, but
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned just the upcoming races coming up on the schedule. 3 races in the round of 8 before we head to Phoenix for the championship. 3 completely different racetracks this weekend. We'll go to Las Vegas Motor Speedway around a mile and a half. We'll then go to Talladega here down there in Alabama, a super speedway on a 2.5-mile track, and then to Martinsville, Virginia for the paperclip and a 0.5-mile track. 3 completely different styles of racing. Looking at the standings, obviously Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, Chase Briscoe, and Joey Logano are on the outside looking in of the 4 drivers that will currently be projected to make the championship 4. Those 4 will be Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, and William Byron. Heather, when you get to this point of the rounds, it's hard to choose guys because all these guys are absolutely phenomenal, have had really good seasons. So when you're looking at this 8 and the tracks ahead, who are some guys that you think can, win and potentially, punch their ticket to the Final 4?
Well, I think when you look at Vegas, the Fords and the the Fords and the Toyotas have been particularly good there. So, you look at Joey and you look at Ryan Blaney, and then you look at Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe, and you think that those guys probably have the upper hand this weekend. You look at Talladega, I mean, Cody Ware could win Talladega. I mean, there's just no telling what's going to happen there. And so I think it's really important for drivers to have a really good race this weekend because of the unpredictability of Talladega. But guys that have traditionally done well at Talladega, again, Blaney is very good. I mean, I think this is a great round for Brent Blaney because, Vegas is probably his weakest track. He's won at Talladega. He's won multiple times at Martinsville. So, and Martinsville, Denny was really strong there in the spring, but he hasn't necessarily been that great in the fall there. It's been Christopher Bell, it's been William Byron, it's been Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney recently at that track. Although in the fall, William Byron, again, much like Denny Hamlin, has not been very good there. If he had been, we probably wouldn't have had the drama we had between him and Seed Bell a year ago. So, I mean, I think you're probably looking at both Penske cars, maybe a couple of Gibbs cars. I think the Hendrick cars are the ones that probably have more concern because I don't know that track-wise this is a great set of tracks for them. But I didn't think that this last round was a great set of tracks for them. And then Chase Elliott out of nowhere goes out and wins Kansas. So you never know what's going to happen. But I would say that just based on history, this round bodes well for the Penske and the Gibbs cars.
Yeah, absolutely, Heather. And then one more question before I pass the baton over to Calvin, who's dying to talk to you about some ETSU. There was some news last week for a non-playoff driver and a future Cup Series driver. Obviously, it was announced that Kyle Busch's crew chief, Randall Burnett, will not be returning to RCR next year, and he will be moving over to Trackhouse Racing, where he will captain the machine that will be handed over to Connor Zilich, who will fill in for Daniel Suarez, who exits. Just give me your thought process on both ends. Obviously, Kyle Busch will be searching for a new crew chief next year, and then obviously, what is the fit like for Randall, who takes over for Connor Zilich, who is one of the young guns and up-and-coming stars in NASCAR?
I think it's a good move. I think it's a good move for Trackhouse and for Randall Burnett. Randall Burnett was the crew chief that brought Tyler Reddick into the Cup Series. So he's worked with young and upcoming high-ceiling drivers. Did a really good job with Reddick. They were easily the most successful driver that Richard Childress Racing has had in the last probably 20 years when they were hooked up together. So I think that's a good move. I think it'll be good for Connor. I think that's the kind of driver that Randall Burnett excels with. I think he's a good coach as a crew chief. So I think that's going to be good for them for sure. I think Connor Zilich he and Corey Heim are certified stars in the making. If they can get in the right situation with the right crew chief, I think you're looking at can't miss. I think Randall Burnett could be that guy. We'll see what the chemistry is like personality wise, because that is every bit as important too. But on paper, this looks like a really good decision.
Heather, moving over to ETSU now. They fell 31-22 on the road to Furman this past Saturday. Don't know how much you actually got to see of this one, but if you did, just kind of let me know what you thought about the Bucks this past week.
I saw none of it because I was at qualifying in Charlotte when the game was going on. I was following along online, and I was actually stunned that they lost. Like I was following, went to do some interviews, came back, and I was like, oh, what happened? And the talent is there. The inability to close out games is a huge concern for this team because they have, and that being said, other than the Tennessee game aside, which is a completely different animal, they're in every game. Like they have the ability to win these games. They have the talent to compete with these teams. What's going on between their ears and why they're not able to close these games out is what the team has to figure out if they want to find any success the rest of the season. Now, granted, they have played two of the tougher teams in the league to start league play. They get VMI this week. Hopefully, they should be able to take care of VMI. But when you lose games like that, and they've lost 3 of them now this way, it does start to get in your head. It does start to become a mental thing. And that's my biggest concern for this team is that they don't lose games between the ears because of how this season has gone so far.
And to your point, they led 15-7 at halftime, but they were outscored 24-7 in the second half. Obviously they're in the locker room and we're not, but is that something that a team can overcome? Do you think they can kind of overcome that mental hurdle of being able to not close out games to just, build some confidence and pick up a win?
That's the big question this week. This team should, as many former FBS players that are in that locker room and as many high-level FCS players that are in that locker room. This is a team that had huge expectations because there's a lot of talent that came into the program. So they should, a team at that level should be able to get past that. Can they? I guess we'll find out. VMI is a game that they should win pretty easily, if we're being honest, based on talent. If they don't, then yeah, there's a huge problem.
And, we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, Jacoby Criswell was back this week, but, neither him nor Cade McNamara had a very good game. Jacoby Criswell, 7 for 14, 100 yards, and an interception. Cade McNamara, just 2 for 7 for 11 yards. Was, obviously we've talked about how he's been hurt over the last couple of weeks, but, is this something that Will Healy is just kind of monitoring and trying to gradually integrate Jacoby Criswell back into the game plan, or is it still him trying to, use both quarterbacks as much as he can to try and gain an advantage?
I was not at the press conference this week, so I don't know what his answer was to that, but his answer in the past has been, we're going to use our quarterbacks like we use our running backs and our receivers, and we're going to use them situationally. And I feel like he's really committed to that. Honestly, following along before I had to leave, before they just totally puked the game in the second half, Criswell actually came out it looked pretty good. I think he completed the first 5 or 6 passes that he made and got off to a really good start. So I don't think injury or anything is a concern for him at this point, just based on the way he started. It just goes back to what I keep harping on, which is they just can't find a way to finish. And he fell apart in the second half a little bit, not horribly, but he wasn't amazing in the second half. And, McNamara has been real hit and miss. Like sometimes he's looked like, oh, okay, I can see why this guy played at Michigan and Iowa. And sometimes he's been like, that guy played at Michigan and Iowa. Like it's just been really hot and cold. And that's a huge problem because those two players, and not financially, because ETSU does not have a lot of NIL money. They did not pay a lot of money to get either one of these players. But the commitment that they made and the sacrifices they made at other positions, when you take two guys like that, they should be performing at a higher level. They just should. I mean, you got a quarterback that started at Michigan and you got one that started at North Carolina. This team should be winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Heather, I have to imagine you are a big Mariners fan this afternoon. Obviously, the Tigers eliminated the Guardians last week. The Mariners looking to do the same against the Tigers right now in Game 4 of their ALDS series. The Mariners are up 3-0 in the bottom of the fifth, an elimination game for Detroit. So I would imagine if we saw you, you would have a smile on your face at that score right now.
I mean, sure. I know. Honestly, it's really hard for me to care when it's not the Royals. My grandfather, God rest his soul, was a Cubs fan. That's probably who I am pulling for at this point, but I know they're not in a great situation either. So I just have cursed all the baseball teams that I follow. So I'm certainly not gonna say anything about the Mariners because the Tigers will come back and score 9 in the ninth inning or something. So I'll just say I'm watching as a not anyone but the Yankees is pretty much going to be my philosophy in the postseason.
I would agree with you there, and for us, it's the Dodgers and the Phillies irk me, and it just so happens that they're in a series together, so one of them has to win. So I guess it'll be the lesser of two evils. But Heather, we appreciate you joining us via the phone. We hope you have a good rest of the week, and we look forward to catching up with you real soon.
Yeah, and just want to point out there was some breaking NASCAR news. You guys were running and probably didn't see it, but they announced that they're going to be increasing the horsepower on the cars next year on the short tracks and the road courses at 750 horsepower. I know a lot of NASCAR fans are really pulling for that and vocally wanting that to happen, and so that's going to happen. They're going to have more horsepower next year.
That's huge because hopefully it can promote more passing, which has been an issue on short tracks and road courses, really, as we saw this past weekend with SVG obviously just dominating. So that is very welcome news, to say the least.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that more next week if you want. I just wanted to get that in there because it literally just happened like 20 minutes ago.
Absolutely. We appreciate you breaking the news here. We'll talk about it more with you next week, Heather. Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, guys.
Come up here on the show as we close out a Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Calvin, just look at his face. He's ready to go. He searched the web. He's dug in all the nooks and the crannies. He's ready to deliver you the wildest and wackiest stories from across the globe. We'll do that next here, around at the show here on Main Street Sports Today. So stick with us.
Being in Tennessee, we wanted to try to keep it as local as possible, so we have an entire section of our menu that is just dedicated to local whiskeys like Uncle Nearest, Jack Daniels, of course, George Dickel, Nelson Brothers, Greenbrier whiskey, and all of our taps are all local. From 2 o'clock until midnight, we've got food every day for you guys. A good handful of appetizers, some entrees, and a couple salads and things like that. My name is Ethan Kanana. Please come down and see us at the Pick Lobby Bar here at the Omni in Nashville.
Welcome back in to Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm David Wilson. That is Calvin White. It's time to close the show with our final segment of the day, where Calvin gives you the wildest and wackiest stories from across the globe. Without further ado, I pass the baton over to one Calvin White.
Yeah, I wanted to hit this one first in case we didn't have time for it at the end, but I saw this morning on Facebook, and I sent this to Mark asking if we could play it. The headline says, chaos broke out at a Golden Corral in Florida after a woman refused to leave the all-you-can-eat buffet, claiming she was getting her money's worth after sitting there for over 3 hours. Staff said she kept going back for dessert even after closing time and told workers it's all you can eat, not when you say stop. The police were called, and they found this woman. She had locked herself in the Golden Corral bathroom with a plate of the buffet shrimp. So she was trying to get her money's worth at Golden Corral.
You know what? I am a fan of buffets. I will say that my dad, who's at the house right now doing some work around the yard, uh, sawing up some tree limbs, he loves some Golden Corral and the buffet. But I promise you, at the same time, though, he ain't trying to be there 3 hours, and he's not trying to eat it in the bathroom per se. But you know what? I guess she thought she was trying to get her money's worth, and I can feel it. It is all you can eat, but at some point, those workers want to go home too. And now she's taking a trip downtown because of this. So that's funny. Got to get there earlier. If you're going to be there all day, then get there at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock when they open. We don't need to get there at 7 or 8 and then have to kick us out. So I'm glad you found that one. That's funny.
Yeah, and I've never been to a Golden Corral.
You haven't?
I have not.
Are you a
But
buffet guy?
I am a buffet guy, but I've never been to a Golden Corral. But I also can't imagine that there's any buffet good enough to want to sit there for 3 hours and then lock yourself in the bathroom with a plate of shrimp.
Yeah, I am a very fast eater, and that's probably bad. Like I probably don't enjoy my food as much as I should. But like my thing is this at buffets, I struggle because I don't know like the proper portions to give myself. I think I always like give myself too little because every time I walk away from a buffet, this sounds crazy because it's all you can eat, and literally you can eat until you drop. But I never feel like I eat as much because I don't know how to portion the food for myself. And there's obviously some foods that I don't touch. I think my routine, Calvin, is normally when I go to a buffet, I start with the salad. Start with the salad, and then you work your way up to obviously your bigger meal, your main course, and then you can. I'm not an ice cream guy. I mean, I'll eat some ice cream. I do like me some pecan pie. But I think that's the normal route you take. But for me, I never just portion it well enough where I can eat all the food and know what I want. So that's my thoughts on buffets. I love buffets. Um, you got my there's a buffet in Columbia called Farmer's Family Restaurant, and I dig me some Farmer's Family Restaurant. So that's on my mind right now for sure. Their salad bar is 10 out of 10.
Yeah, there was when I was growing up in Lebanon, there was a buffet called Ryan's. I don't know if it's a chain or if it was
Oh,
a
Ryan's
one-off.
used to be a great thing, and they've all like since closed.
Yeah, and the
But
one in Lebanon,
yeah,
I
what?
don't know if all of them did it, but if you were under like 10 years old, you got in for free. And so my
Mhm.
my brother did not hit his growth spurt until he was, like 14 or 15. And so
Oh, so they thought he was 9.
my brother was 12 and 13 looking like he was 8, 9, 10 years old. So my mom and dad would sneak him into the buffet and get him in for free.
Yeah, I mean, the Shoney's out there in Lebanon at the exit right before you go to Watertown, they still have a buffet for breakfast, and so, I mean, buffets are still certainly a thing, but for me, it's just knowing how to portion the food on my plate.
Absolutely. Moving on to our second wild and wacky story, we're getting into our first world record of the day. The headline reads Indiana woman's Joker collection earns Guinness World Record. A 22-year-old comic book fan from Indiana earned a Guinness World Record for her collection of 2,318 items related to the Batman villain, the Joker. Um, she started collecting in middle school, and she's amassed items ranging from action figures and comic books to Joker rollerblades, a skateboard, and milk caps from 1966. So, got a big fan of Batman's arch nemesis.
That is funny you brought that up. I watched a movie yesterday on Netflix, that had Heath Ledger in it, and it just made me think of his role, obviously in the Batman movies as the Joker, as that character right there. And to say the least, first of all, gone too soon. The way he played that role, and I know I'm going off topic of what this is, but the way he played that role, second to none. I mean, I think the rumors are true that he locked himself away for like weeks at a time to just like to get the character of what the Joker should be. Um, Moving forward to this, I'm not going to pretend, excuse me, to be the biggest, you know, comic book, movie, all that kind of deal, whether, it's, Spider-Man or, Batman or even the Avengers, like all those Marvel, etc. I'm not the biggest guy, but, I do appreciate a good movie every now and then. So they've definitely been on the menu to watch.
Yeah, I was. Um, I've never been a comic book person, but I've seen all the movies, and you know, like you mentioned, Heath Ledger's Joker is probably one of the best movie villains of all time. Um, and this person that says she started her collection in during COVID, and she was encouraged to apply for a Guinness World Record. Trying to find the previous record. There's no previous record on here, but it says her hobby has allowed her to make connections with Joker fandom figures, including actor Mark Hamill, who voiced the character in several animated and video game projects. So she got to meet Luke Skywalker.
That she did. That she did. Comic books have not really been my thing. I tell people this, and maybe I'm telling on myself, and I probably shouldn't. For being a quote unquote journalist and a writer, and you might be able to say this the same. For all the reading that I do of our work and colleagues' work and my own work, I really in my spare time don't like to keep on reading. And I know that sounds really bad, but I read enough words and I read enough words during a day or during the week. I'm like, I'm just done with that. I need to go do something else. So reading, definitely probably my weak spot to say the least.
Yeah, I like to read, but it's not something that I'm going to sit down for hours at a time to do. But we stick with our world records for our third wild and wacky story. This one's probably one of the more impressive ones that we've had over the last couple of weeks, just because of the degree of difficulty, I think. But an Australian woman performed 733 pull-ups in 1 hour. An Australian bodybuilder broke a Guinness World Record that had stood for nearly a decade when she completed the feat. Jade Henderson, she's 32 years old, averaged more than 12 pull-ups a minute to break the record of 725 that was set by fellow Australian Eva Clark in 2016. Now, I was, active for most of my life. I played sports all through high school. Was never once able to do one successful pull-up. I am a rather large human being, and to do 733 of them, especially in an hour, is outrageous.
Okay, so this is where I stand on the pull up. Are we talking like this? Are we talking like, 'cause if we're doing like this, I can do those. And I'm not saying I can do that many, but it's easier for me to go here than up than out here and then up. Pull if that makes sense. She's out here,
Yeah.
which is absolutely, and I'm not trying to flex on anybody by the way, but like she's out here and that's pretty impressive. I mean, if you look at her, I mean the lady is yoked.
She's jacked.
Yoked is the right word. She's very jacked, and so I can see God, my muscles will be aching at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, let alone 700 of them things. So she can have that one. It's definitely impressive. I wonder, does it say how many she did at one time and then took a break?
Um, let's see. It says that she was preparing to go for the 24-hour version of the record, but
Okay.
she had an injury. She says she did 3,500.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah. It says she did 3,500 pull-ups in 12 hours, and then she tore her bicep. She had a partial tear of her bicep tendon and muscle and had to rest for about 6 weeks before she was able to do pull-ups again. She said she didn't have a set number that she was aiming for. She says, I knew it was going to be tough to beat the previous record of 725, so I was just aiming to get a couple more reps than that. It doesn't say how many she did consecutively before stopping, but I mean, it broke it down earlier. That's an average of 12 pull-ups a minute. So pretty impressive either way you look at it.
Yeah, that's nuts, and I can understand why she tore her bicep. I mean, that look at the stress that you're putting on that body part as you go up and down, and the wear and tear, and her physically to be able to keep going. I can definitely understand why that occurred. So glad that she healed from it. and that she was able to get back on the bar at some point, but she can have that record. That's not one that I will attempt. Like I said, I can go here, I can go up there, but out here, that's a struggle. And the
Yeah.
blisters that you would get on your hands as well. That's she's wearing gloves, so I guess the case. I'm used to, when we go work out back in the day as an athlete, they didn't give us gloves. You just go up there and you do it. We were lucky if we were, lifting, we got the chalk and we could put it on our hands, but no gloves
Yeah.
back in the day
Yeah,
for us.
that's a record she can keep. But our next wild and wacky story is one that producer Mark said was his favorite of today. A water skiing squirrel delights crowds at North Carolina Fair. The Carolina Classic Fair in Winston-Salem is pulling in large crowds with a talented headlining performer, Twiggy the water skiing squirrel.
I can see why this was Mark's favorite.
Yeah,
Did we domesticate this? Is the squirrel just? I mean, he's a pet now. Like,
it says
hence
the
why he does this.
Says the talented squirrel is not the first to bear the name and skill set. The first Twiggy was adopted by Lou Ann Best and her husband Chuck when Hurricane David knocked the baby squirrel out of its nest in Central Florida in 1979. Best trained a total 8 water skiing squirrels before retiring. The latest squirrel to carry the Twiggy torch tours the country with her son, Chuck Best Jr. So she's taught 8 squirrels how to water ski. I also don't know why it has a life jacket on. I'm pretty sure squirrels can swim, right?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. It's not something I've seen before, but apparently she has, and she has a talent for training them for sure. So
Squirrels can swim according to my Google box.
Google, can they be trusted? Can AI be trusted?
I put it in Google. I don't trust the AI.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I mean, I also don't know how you go about training the squirrel to do this, like getting it to stand on the skis and hold on to the thing right there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Gonna get to
That's
what.
Go ahead. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
We're gonna get to our final wild and wacky story of the day. Probably our weirdest. I guess that's the point. Our weirdest world record yet. Serial record breaker prepares to take on her own Just Dance title. A California woman used her love of dance-based video games to break several world records, including the overall longest video game marathon ever, and she's preparing to attempt it again. This woman named Carrie Swedecki is a 4th grade teacher. She has a bunch of records. I'm trying to find it. She ended up setting the Guinness World Record for the longest video game marathon playing a Just Dance game. Longest video game marathon playing a rhythm game. Longest video game marathon on a motion sensing dance game. And the longest video game marathon playing a dance game. She used Just Dance 2015 to set the record for the longest video game marathon ever at 138 hours and 34 seconds. So she played Just Dance for 138 hours consecutively.
I need to go to bed. I need to sleep, and I can't surely be active that long. Goodness gracious. It's a lot of movement, it's a lot of Just Dance.
Yeah, she definitely got her steps in. So she was training 45 hours a week and completed 2 practice 120-hour marathons. So she did this multiple times.
That's nuts. That's nuts. I guess that's a good one to close on because it left us kind of both speechless to say the least. Is that it? That'll do it?
That's it.
All right, y'all. That'll do it here on a Wild and Wacky Wednesday here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Special thanks to Heather Williams and Drew Hill for stopping by to talk a little NASCAR and a little Grizzlies ahead of the upcoming season. Tomorrow afternoon, it's Maurice Patton back in the seat with myself on a Throwback Thursday and a little Coach's Corner as well. I think the Throwback Thursday segment will be our interview last week with Jeff Fisher of the Nashville Cats. Be looking forward to hearing that. Alvin's done for the week. He's got high school football on the docket not only on Thursday but on Friday, right?
Yep. I'll be at Clarksville, Shelbyville tomorrow, and East Robertson, Houston County on Friday.
There you go. That's where he will be. You can follow him on X at Calvin White 55. I'll be back here tomorrow. See you then. Have a good evening.